Chapter 1. A preposterous past life reborn at age 13. Boom. Deep in the garden, the sound of something falling into the water echoed, scattering water droplets everywhere and startling the wild ducks in the lake into flight. How wonderful, Madame Juan, so gentle and virtuous. How wonderful, third-rank Imperial Command Lady. Standing at the edge of the lake, Pei Yuanyong looked down at Pei Yuanj, who was struggling in the water, and smiled mockingly. Look at you now, so disheveled, so ugly. It truly breaks one's heart. Why? Pei Yuanj struggled in the water, but as she opened her mouth, dirty lake water flooded in. Having heard that her third sister and brother-in-law were separating, divorcing, she had disregarded her weakened state from a recent miscarriage and suppressed her grief over the loss of her child to come and comfort her. She had even been careful with her appearance, wearing only elegant colors and no gold jewelry, fearing that her third sister would find it displeasing. Such care and concern she could never have imagined that Pei Yuanyong would push her into the lake. Why? Pei Yuanyong watched Pei Yuanj in the water, her temple hair disheveled and wet from struggling, clinging to her pale face, making her look utterly miserable. Feeling a surge of satisfaction, she giggled. Of course, it's because you're standing in my way, so you must die. If you don't die, how can I become the young madam of the Wan Manor, a third-rank Imperial Command Lady? Weren't you delighted that I was getting divorced, eager to flaunt your happiness in front of me? But do you know why the Li family was sued? Do you know why I got divorced? A layer of fog rose in Pei Yuanj's heart. She gritted her teeth and asked, why? Her voice trembled, not knowing if it was from the cold or from fear of knowing the answer. Because. The smile on Pei Yuanyong's face deepened, becoming even more smug. Finally, the day had come when she could see Pei Yuanj's miserable appearance, when a daughter of a concubine like her could snatch everything from her, including her life. How could she not be smug? Thinking of this, Pei Yuanyong's eyes shone brighter. Using her softest, most affectionate voice, she slowly said, I'm pregnant, with Guanlang's child. Your husband, the third-rank valiant cavalry general Wan Guangshao. You're lying, Pei Yuanj angrily retorted, but as she opened her mouth, more water flooded in, causing her to choke and cough continuously, her pale face turning red. She had always respected and cared for her husband. How could he possibly? Don't believe me? Then look at what this is. Pei Yuanyong slowly took a delicate silk pouch from her chest and even more slowly took out a jade bracelet from within. She was enjoying the process, so every action was slow, every expression on her face clear. Surely you recognize this Wan family heirloom jade bracelet, passed down only to the wife. Guess why it's in my hands. And this sachet, you certainly can't say you don't recognize it. Pei Yuanj felt as if thunder had struck her. Her mind felt empty, as if it had exploded. How could she not recognize it? She had painstakingly embroidered that sachet herself and given it to her husband, Wan Guangshao, to hold the jade bracelet. She still remembered his words at the time. Yuanj, let me keep this bracelet for now. This is the bracelet passed down to the wife, the Wan family's lady. When I look at it, it's like I'm looking at you. I'll put it in this sachet and always carry it with me, as if you're always by my side. His words still echoed in her ears, but now the sachet and bracelet were in another woman's hands. Moreover, that woman was her sister. You. Pei Yuanj froze, momentarily forgetting to struggle, sinking heavily into the water. More water flooded into her ears, eyes, nose, and mouth, filling her lungs. The pressure increased, and the suffocation made it difficult to breathe. Suddenly, like a madwoman, she thrashed about in the water, desperately searching for something to hold on to, trying to find a way to survive. In the chaos, her hand seemed to brush against the eaves of the lake's edge. She desperately clung to it, struggling to hold on to the slippery surface. Do you think that killing me will make you Madame Wan? Even if you and my husband are having an affair, I am still his lawful wife. He knows that I came to visit you today. If something unexpected happens to me here, do you think you can escape suspicion? Denying knows, and she won't let you get away with it. Peyuanj glared at Peyuanyong, her words ringing out. Have you ever considered who told you I was at this villa, prompting you to come visit? Peyuanyong didn't feel fear but became even more smug. She leaned down, looking at Peyuanj, answering in a soft, gentle voice as if whispering sweet nothings. It was Guanlang who wanted you dead. Otherwise, how would I dare to act? Her embroidered shoes stepped forward, placing her full weight on Peyuanja's small hands, crushing them mercilessly, grinding her right foot in. What did you say? Peyuanj looked at Peyuanyong in disbelief, forgetting even the pain in her hands. Her husband, he wanted her dead. Once, she had been the only daughter of the minister's manor, while Wan Guangshao had been just a small-time Jinshi scholar. She had brought 124 chests of dowry and a 10-li bridal procession when she married into the Wan family. She had been filial to her parents-in-law, caring for her husband, looking after her younger sister-in-law, and managing the household, and everyone praised her gentleness and virtue. In just 4 short years, Wan Guangshao had risen from a Jinshi scholar to a third-rank flying cavalry general, and the Wan family had gone from an unknown household to the #1 merchant family in Jiangnan, both rich and powerful. How much of that was due to her efforts? But she had never boasted about it. When Wan Guangshao held a position in the capital, she stayed in Jiangnan to manage the household and be filial to her parents-in-law. To care for him, she had even endured the pain and taken 3 concubines for him, sending them to the capital to serve him. For 4 years, day after day, she had cared for him gently and meticulously, yet he wanted to kill her. Do you think Guanlang really loved you? He only coveted your status as a daughter. Did you really think it was a coincidence that the Hangguo Duke's manor called off the engagement? As for my Niang, looking at Peyuanja's shocked and heartbroken expression, Peyuanyong felt immense pleasure, as if the resentment and jealousy that had accumulated over the years had reached a perfect climax. Her smile was as sharp as a knife. Your cheap, short-lived birth mother was killed by my mother. Do you think my mother would truly love you? Cutting flesh to cure an illness? Humph, only a fool like you would believe it. Peyuanja's pupils contracted violently, and her pale lips were bitten until they bled. Her mother, it turned out, she had been killed by Yang Yinyang. And it was Yang Yinyang and Wan Guangshao who had orchestrated her public humiliation in the capital by calling off the engagement with the Hangguo Duke's manor. Her life had been completely destroyed by the 2 of them. Suddenly, a flash of insight struck her. Peyuanj fiercely raised her head, her eyes burning like fire. My child, you're not completely stupid, are you? How could Guanlang want your child? In other words, how could I allow your child to be above mine? Peyuanyong touched her belly, undoubtedly enjoying the millions of splendorous offspring. Her dimples bloomed like flowers. Originally, I wanted to eliminate both of you at childbirth, but I didn't expect you to be so strong that you survived. So I had no choice but to act myself. They had harmed her mother, destroyed her life, killed her child. Peyuanj only felt the anger and pain in her chest about to explode. Suddenly, she didn't know where she found the strength, but she grabbed Peyuanyong's leg and dragged her into the water. Even if she had to die, she wanted Peyuanyong to die with her. Peyuanyong never expected Peyuanj to suddenly cause trouble. She panicked and screamed, "Someone! Save me! Young miss, what's wrong? Young miss!" Just at this moment, the anxious cries of Gui Mama, Peyuanja's wet nurse, and the maids Bai Wei and Baisi, rang out. It was only then that Peyuanj remembered that she had brought people with her. They must have heard the commotion in the garden and run over here. She was saved. Peyuanj almost cried with joy. With them here, she wouldn't die in vain. If she could survive, She would never let go of those who had been plotting against her. But, Gui Mama, by way, by. Pei couldn't even finish calling out see. She could only watch in disbelief as those three familiar figures pried her fingers loose, and because she was holding on so tightly, they even broke 4 of her fingers. They vigorously pushed her back into the lake and then comforted the terrified Pei Yuanyong. This time, she didn't ask why. Wasn't everything in front of her clear enough? Gui Mama, by way, Basie their young miss wasn't her. Ha 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 ha. Looking at the preposterous and unreal scene before her, Pei Yuan suddenly burst out laughing. Her voice, originally low, gradually grew louder, until finally it pierced the sky, filled with rage, hatred, unwillingness, and curses, making those who heard it tremble. Fake! It was all fake. Everything was fake. The wet nurse and maids who had taken care of her since she was young, the yin-yang who loved her, the straightforward and kind third sister, the gentle and devoted husband, the wealth and prestige, the complacent glory looking back, it was all just a conspiracy, a flower in a mirror, a painting in the water. Pei Yuan, oh Pei Yuan, how foolish could you be? For the past 20 years, how had you lived in such lies and deceit? The laughter grew sharper and sharper, until blood slowly flowed from her 7 orifices, spreading across her pale, resentful face. Her burning red eyes, like those of a demon, stared at the people on the shore. Finally, having exhausted all her strength, she slowly sank into the water. Her black hair spread out, and the bright red blood floated on the surface, spreading in layers, creating a scene of tragic desolation. Even as she died, her eyes were wide open, staring fixedly at the shore. She was staring intensely at the people before her. She had to remember everything that had happened today, remember every word she had heard, not forgetting a single thing. She would forever remember, and she would absolutely, absolutely, not let these people go. If there was an afterlife, even if she had to enter the dark and shadowy realm of ghosts, transform into a demon, and be unable to be reborn for all eternity, she would surely drag these people, all of them, down to hell together. The western sun's afterglow cast a layer of blood red over the secluded villa. The lake water was cold, the breath was murky, and blood was spreading on the surface. The pain was tearing at her heart and soul. In her confusion, Pei Yuan didn't know where she was. She seemed to hear people talking in her ears. Finally, she vaguely opened her eyes. My poor 4th young miss. Gui Mama, who had been sitting and cracking melon seeds, saw her wake up and hurriedly pushed the plate away, changing her expression. She rushed forward and embraced the weak Pei Yuan in her arms, wailing, "The Yangguo Duke's manor has called off the engagement. How can a woman whose engagement has been broken have the face to go on living? 4th young miss, you're not like 3rd young miss, who is beautiful and has a likable personality. How will you live in the future?" She didn't care how hurtful her words were and continued to cry incessantly. The Yangguo Duke's manor had called off the engagement. Pei Yuan's mind was in a daze. Hadn't she been pushed into the lake by Pei Yuanyong and died? The icy cold water, the feeling of breathing in mud, still seemed to cling to her body, and there was still the pain and hatred deep in her bones. Dazed, she looked around. What met her eyes was a familiar yet unfamiliar bed, a light pink curtain, a pale purple canopy, and a sandalwood bed carved with patterns. This was her boudoir before she got married. And the Gui Mama before her eyes was much younger than the one she had seen before her death. And Pei Yuan lowered her head, looking at her pale, thin arms, her delicate, small body, looking like she was only 13 or 14 years old. Wait, 13 years old? The Yangguo Duke's manor had called off the engagement. Pei Yuan thought back. That's right, she had been betrothed to an Iwaran, the heir of the Yangguo Duke's manor, since childhood, but then the Yangguo Duke's manor had come to call off the engagement, their intention firm. Because of this, She had suffered a great blow and had become seriously ill, almost losing her life. This had happened when she was exactly 13 years old. Could it be that she hadn't died but had returned to the age of 13? Peyuange was alarmed and eagerly got up, confirming that everything around her was not an illusion. If that was the case, then she had really returned to the age of 13. It was difficult to express her joy at this moment. She laughed loudly in her heart. Heaven has eyes! Heaven has eyes! 13 years old, many things had happened in the Pei Manor this year. It could be said that this was a turning point in her life. Now, fate had brought her back to the age of 13. This must mean that heaven was showing pity for her tragic situation and giving her a unique opportunity to fulfill the vows she had made before her death. Forth, young miss, what's wrong with you? Guimama asked, trembling in her heart. Was it her imagination? Just now, an expression like that of a demon from the shadowy depths of hell had flashed across Fourth young Miss's face, making her feel afraid. Guimama, I'm fine. Peyuange slowly raised her eyes, smiling, and calmly looked at Guimama before her. The one who had broken each of her fingers on the shore, the one who had ruthlessly pushed her into the lake, was her wet nurse. She had been struck by the annulment and fallen ill, and now, as soon as she woke up, this woman was crying loudly, stabbing her in the heart with every word, without a single word of comfort in her past life. She had been truly blind not to have seen the ambitions of these people, thinking that they were loyal and devoted to her. But it was okay. Now, she was no longer the same as before. This time, it was her turn to send these people down to hell. For some reason, being glanced at so calmly by the young miss made Guimama feel cold. She didn't dare to meet Peyuange's dark eyes. Swallowing nervously, she was about to find an excuse to leave when suddenly Baisy's clear voice came from outside the door. Guimama, dinner. Seeing that Peyuange was sitting up, her expression faltered, and she immediately said with a smile, Fourth young miss is awake. Just in time for dinner. I'll bring it to you. Peyuange smiled and nodded, saying, Okay. Seeing that Peyuange's gaze had shifted to Baisy, Guimama felt a little more at ease and let out a soft breath, only to see Peyuange turn her head, startled. But this time, Peyuange was very normal, weak and gentle. She leaned her head lightly on her shoulder, her face sorrowful, her expression tired. Before long, Baisy brought up the food. Peyuange looked at it, her expression freezing. On the table was only a plate of pickled vegetables, a plate of boiled string beans, a plate of stir-fried vegetables that were burnt black, and a yellowed cornbread. Was this her food? Even a third-class maid wouldn't be reduced to this. Looking at Baisy before her, with her quick and lively figure and her rosy white face, there was even a greasy stain on the corner of her mouth that she hadn't wiped off, and there were even traces of wiping meat on the inconspicuous parts of her clothes. Peyuange laughed coldly in her heart. Because her mother had died early and no one was protecting her, she had once had an extremely difficult time in her past life, and the food and clothing she received were no different from those of the servants in the manor. Therefore, many maids had wanted to leave at that time, but only Guimama, Bai Wei, and Baisy had stayed by her side. She had thought that it was a bond forged through shared hardships, but now it seemed that the hardship was all hers, and the three of them were only willing Gan to stay. Gan here is a pun on the term, meaning to willingly stay, but using only the first character. Kneel down for me. Peyuange, who had been gentle until now, suddenly became angry, causing Baisy to panic, but she was still not afraid and did not kneel down. She lifted her neck and said rebelliously, Why is Fourth young miss making me kneel? I haven't done anything wrong. The kitchen sent the food like this. I'm only responsible for bringing the food up. If Fourth young miss is unhappy, then go find the kitchen to argue with. Why are you making things difficult for a maid who doesn't know anything like me? Are you picking on me because I'm easy to bully? As she spoke, she began to sob, and the louder she cried. Peyuange looked around at her surrounding, and everyone there seemed to sympathize with Basie. No one told her to stop crying, and they even looked at Peyuange with disdain, as if she only knew how to bully the weak. Even Gui Mama's face showed disapproval. All the maids and mamas in this room, I'm afraid not a single one is loyal to her. It's a pity she hadn't seen through it at all before. Seeing that Basie was crying even more terribly, Peyuange said nothing and picked up the teacup next to her and threw it at Basie. But because she was weak and powerless, the porcelain cup fell 2 steps away from Basie, shattering into pieces. Shards of porcelain flew out, grazed Basie's face, and 2 streaks of blood appeared. Having never seen Peyuange so angry, Basie was momentarily stunned, forgetting to cry. "Keep crying. I want to see how long you can cry," Peyuange said with a cold face, scolding loudly. "Kneel down." Basie's heart trembled. Feeling that Peyuange had an indescribable air of authority and power, her legs involuntarily went limp, and she collapsed to the ground. "Slap yourself in the face 20 times, Peyuange said. In an instant, Basie recovered her senses, secretly scolding herself for being pathetic just now. Regaining her courage, she said, "Fourth young miss is the master, and I am the maid. Even if fourth young miss wants me to die, I can only accept my fate." She said she accepted her fate, but her face held an arrogant air that refused to accept it at all. "But even if fourth young miss wants me to die, you must let me die clearly. What did I do wrong that made fourth young miss punish me in front of so many people? Otherwise, even if I die, I will be a wronged ghost." Peyuange was seriously ill, and yet she kept talking about living and dying, completely without any hesitation. Peyuange was secretly annoyed in her heart, but her face remained expressionless, and she said coldly, "All right, you want to be a ghost who understands, then I'll let you die understanding." As she spoke, a voice suddenly announced from outside the door, "Ang Yin Yang has come to visit fourth young miss." Before the words were finished, Ang Yin Yang, dressed in brocade clothing, stepped into the room, a hairpin inlaid with red jade set into her black hair, making her particularly charming. She sat on the flower couch with a smile. "I just stepped in the door and heard someone wanting someone to die clearly. Our Pei Manor has always been magnanimous. Who is so vicious as to want someone to die like that? Moreover, fourth young miss is seriously ill. No matter what the servants did wrong, a few reprimands are enough. Consider it accumulating good karma for fourth young miss." Having spoken, she didn't even bother to look at Peyuange and ordered someone to help Basie, who was kneeling on the ground, up. Chapter 2. Punishing the insolent servant. Seeing Yang Yan speak up, Basie felt relieved but didn't get up. Instead, she cried out even louder, wailing, "Spare me, Yin Yang. Someone wants to beat me to death." Yang Yan said with feigned surprise, "Is that so?" She looked around but didn't even glance at Peyuange. Her expression turned angry as she said, "Not to mention the reputation of our Pei Manor, Baigi has served fourth young miss loyally and devotedly since she was little. Recently, she has been very favored by fourth young miss. Even if she made a mistake, it can be gradually taught, so how can one be so cruel and insist on beating someone to death? Isn't this deliberately undermining fourth young miss's reputation?" Guimama stepped forward and said, reporting to Yang Yin Yang, "It was fourth young miss who gave the order." Peyuange originally only wanted Baidi to slap herself in the face 20 times, but through Baisi's crying accusations just now, Yang Yin Yang became angry. Added to that, Guimama's false report twisted the truth, saying that it was her who wanted to beat Baidi to death, ruining the Pei Manor's reputation. Moreover, Baidi had been serving her since she was little. If this matter spread, everyone would think that Peyuange was ungrateful, merciless, and cruel. All eyes immediately focused on Peyuange. Beneath the light pink curtains, Peyuange leaned against the flower pillows, her face pale and haggard due to her illness, but still exuding a gentle and endearing charm. Seeming to deliberately misunderstand the meaning of the words, She smiled weakly and said softly, "Thank you, Ang Yin Yang, for coming to visit me. Now that I'm ill, I'm still receiving Yin Yang's concern." After saying that, she loudly scolded the young maid. "What are you standing there dazed for? Why aren't you serving tea to Yin Yang?" The maids reacted at this time, some of them bringing tea and giving it to the head maid Shi Yan beside Yang Yan, and then having Shi Yan give it to Yang Yan. Yang Yan was stunned. Normally, at this moment, Pei Yuan should have lowered her voice, admitted her mistake, and let the matter go. But now, it seemed that she didn't take her words to heart, as if she didn't hear them. Yang Yan had been managing the Pei manor for nearly 10 years, and everything about Pei Yuan was under her control. She could accurately predict her reactions to everything, but the sudden appearance of a situation she couldn't foresee couldn't help but attract her attention. Because of her distraction, she didn't catch the teacup, and the white porcelain teacup with blue patterns fell to the ground with a thud, shattering. The crisp sound echoed in the quiet room, becoming even more distinct. Pei Yuan raised her eyebrows and immediately said, "You can't even hold a teacup properly. What use does Yin Yang have for you? Why don't you take her down and punish her with 20 strokes?" The smile on Yang Yan's face stiffened, revealing an angry expression. She held the power to manage the household and was also a half-elder, yet this Pei Yuan dared to disregard her and directly punish her maid. "Hit Shi Yan. No." This was a slap in her face. A ruthless look flashed in her eyes, and she said heavily, "Fourth young miss is truly powerful. Shi Yan is a maid in my CD courtyard. It's not fourth young miss's turn to discipline her yet. Ang Yin Yang's words are very true. It's true that the maids of CD courtyard are not for me to manage. I have overstepped my bounds," Pei Yuan said with an apologetic expression. Everyone present thought that she had conceded, but Pei Yuan suddenly changed the topic, her expression becoming stern. "If that's the case, then it's also not Ang Yin Yang's place to interfere with my disciplining the maids in my Jingzhou chamber. Don't even talk about slapping her in the face 20 times, even if I wanted to beat her to death, it would be a matter within my courtyard." Only now did Yang Yan know that she had fallen for Pei Yuan's trick. She was speechless for a moment, and only after a long time did she reluctantly say, "Fourth young miss speaks of discipline and death at every turn. If this matter were to spread, others would inevitably think that you are cruel and harsh. I originally had good intentions, but I didn't expect fourth young miss to be so resistant. On the contrary, it seems that fourth young miss's purpose is not to punish Baigi, but to deliberately target me." Yin Yang entered the door without asking the reason for the matter and immediately rebuked me for not being allowed to discipline the maids in my own courtyard, as if every move of Jingzhou chamber, even the right and wrong of the event just now, Yin Yang is clearer than anyone else. Pei Yuan didn't retreat half a step and said sharply, "Yin Yang is in charge of the household. I want to ask Yin Yang, Bai Li is a maid, but she greedily stole my food and gave me food like that. The servant is bullying the master. Shouldn't I discipline her a little?" Bai Li cried out, "Fourth young miss is slandering me. What are you basing your claim that I stole your food on? Did young miss see it with her own eyes? Have you ever heard this saying? When stealing food, you must know how to wipe your mouth. Look at the food stains on your clothes, and then look in the mirror to see the greasy stains still on your mouth. I don't know when the food for our manners maids has become better than the young ladies." Pei Yuan said coldly, "If you didn't steal my food, how could you bring this food to me? Could it be that your intention is that the people in the kitchen deliberately delayed and deliberately gave me this kind of food?" This time, Bai Li didn't know how to defend herself and could only look at Yang Yan for help. Yang Yin Yang also knew about them stealing food, but she hadn't severely reprimanded them. But now Pei Yuan mentioned the kitchen. Yang Mama, the person in charge of the kitchen, was also Yang Yan's confidant. If she continued to argue, implicating the kitchen, the situation would turn into Yang Yin Yang being harsh on the daughter. Yang Yin Yang always valued her reputation and would definitely not admit to such a crime. She finally became frightened and kowtowed, saying, "Fourth young miss, have mercy. This was clearly an admission of guilt. Pei Yuanj coldly looked at Ang Yan. Yin Yang, you are the manager of the household. May I ask, how should stealing the master's food be punished? Ang Yan wanted to suppress Pei Yuanj's power very much, but she knew the importance of things and didn't want to lose big for the sake of small matters. She could only grit her teeth and say, beat her 20 strokes and fine her half a year's worth of pocket money. Just now, in front of everyone, she kept saying this is the crime of disrespect, how should it be handled? Ang Yan endured and said, 10 strokes. I originally only wanted to punish her with 20 slaps in the face, which could be considered a warning, but Ang Yin Yang is in charge of the household. Since you have said so, then I can only follow your instructions. Pei Yuanj sighed softly and calmly instructed, didn't you hear Yang Yin Yang's instructions? Why aren't you taking her down to beat her 30 strokes, fine her half a year's worth of pocket money, and warn her? In this exchange, Pei Yuanj had gained the upper hand. Bai Zi being punished made Ang Yan extremely uncomfortable. Now, hearing her meaning, it was as if this punishment was ordered by her, and Pei Yuanj was kind-hearted in contrast, wanting to punish her lightly but was unable to sway her, so she had to do so. This made Ang Yan want to vomit blood when she heard it and finally couldn't continue to sit any longer and directly returned to CD courtyard. As she entered the courtyard, her wet nurse, Wang Mama, stepped forward to greet her and happily said, Yin Yang, the old master just sent a message saying that the master has been ordered to return to the capital and will be back in 3 or 4 days. The old master she spoke of was Ang Yan's blood brother, Ang Yan. According to the rules, Ang Yan was only a concubine, and the Yang family and the Pei family were not considered relatives, but Ang Yan had been managing affairs for a long time, held great power in the mansion, and everyone just called him that. Ang Yan was shocked. Wasn't there a letter last month saying that the war situation was urgent? Why is he suddenly coming back? Aren't you looking forward to the master's return every day? Wang Mama asked in confusion. Ang Yan anxiously said, of course, I'm looking forward to the master's return, but now is not the time. Her finger pointed towards Jingzhou chamber, saying, the engagement over there was just cancelled, and that girl is sick. When the master comes back, how am I going to answer? If the master sees through any clues, She originally thought that Bo Chu Than wouldn't be back for a year and a half, and when he returned, this matter would have subsided, but she didn't expect. Moreover, Pei Yuanj's unusual behavior today also made her heart uneasy. Wang Mama came to her senses and became worried as well, but suddenly, a thought moved in her heart, and she whispered, in my opinion, this 4th young miss is sick at the right time, sick very well. If she gets even more seriously ill, that would be even better. Seeing Ang Yan ponder, a sharp glint flashed in her cloudy eyes, and she slowly said, if she doesn't get seriously ill, how will others know that you truly care for her? As long as the master feels that you treat the 4th child like a kind mother, how can he suspect you? Chapter 3. Re-encountering Ban Nugen Dang. Miss. In a hazy daze, it felt as if someone was shaking her and calling out urgently. Ban Nugen Ka struggled to open her eyes, realizing it was the middle of the night. The surroundings were quiet, moonlight streamed in through the window, mingling with the flickering candlelight in the room, illuminating the empty space. The air was filled with an unfamiliar, faint herbal scent, indicating someone had been there, but she didn't know where they had gone. As she pondered, she felt something unusual on her wrist. Looking down, she saw a small piece of paper peeking out from under her wrist. After reading the contents, Bai Nugen Cub burned the paper in the lamp's chimney. Her sickly, pale face was expressionless, her eyes were deep and still. The flickering light danced around her, creating shadows that seemed to swallow her whole, shrouding her in gloom. "My fourth miss, the master is here to see you. Even if you cry and beg him, you must get him to reconsider this marriage. You must understand, the Yenguo Duke's lineage is noble and not easy to climb into. Moreover, a woman who is jilted will lose all her reputation. If she's clever, it won't matter, but you, fourth miss, are so honest and don't know how to please your in-laws. In the end, you'll only be able to marry a man who's fallen on hard times. This old servant is heartbroken for you. Every word I say is from the bottom of my heart. Please, don't let them go in one ear and out the other." Granny Q rambled on as usual, while arranging Bai Nuyenka's hair into loose braids. She deliberately made the bangs thick to hide her bright eyes, and applied a thick layer of white powder to conceal her smooth, soft skin. She chose an earthy yellow short jacket with embroidered patterns and matching pants, but the collar, waist, and cuffs were altered to make the wearer look plump. Bai Nuyenka looked at her sickly reflection in the mirror and smiled faintly. "Granny Q, your skills are truly excellent." Her appearance greatly resembled her late mother, Min Cam, and was exceedingly beautiful. But in her previous life, Granny Q had ways of suppressing her beauty, making her seem unremarkable. Bai Nuyendong was elegant and refined, while she was ordinary. Bai Nuyendong was beautiful and graceful, while she was dull. Whenever she stood before Bai Nuyendong, she was like a green leaf serving as a backdrop for a rose. She was young and trusted Granny Q, so she always believed that she was simply born less beautiful than Bai Nuyendong, never suspecting a thing. It wasn't until she married into the Wan household that the Wan matriarch taught her how to dress and apply makeup. Granny Q always said she was old and had been blind before, so she believed it, never realizing the malicious intentions. A maidservant outside announced, "Master, third miss and concubine Chewing are here to visit fourth miss. Bai Nuyendong, she's here too." Bai Nuyenka's usually calm expression suddenly shattered, her entire body trembled uncontrollably, and the memories of her death came rushing back. She clenched her fists, allowing her long nails to dig into her skin, wanting to use the pain to force herself to stay awake. But Chu Than stepped around the screen and entered. Seeing her condition, he assumed she was ill, quickly helping her lie back down on the bed. He tucked her in with a blanket and said displeased, "If you're not feeling well, don't get out of bed so easily. We're all family here, no need to be so formal. Changing clothes and doing your hair can wait, it is more important to rest and recover." Bai Nuyendong wore a milky white shirt with pink accents and a red skirt. Her hair was adorned with 2 gold phoenix hairpins inlaid with rubies, and pearl tassels hung slightly to the side. With her jade-like skin and delicate eyebrows, she smiled charmingly, appearing even more dazzling with Bai Nuyenka as a foil. She laughed beautifully and said, "Fourth sister must love to dress up, even before she's fully recovered from her illness. She is in a hurry to doll up. Even when father comes to visit, she is still sitting in front of the mirror admiring her makeup. She really deserves a spanking." As she spoke and laughed, seemingly teasing Bai Nuyenka, her intentions were malicious. In this era, filial piety reigned supreme. When a father visited, a daughter should go out to greet him, showing respect. Bai Nuyenka was severely ill, so her not greeting him from afar could be excused. But now that she had the energy to doll up, yet couldn't even get up to greet her father, if word got out, people could accuse her of being unfilial. Gazing at Bai Nuyenzung's beautiful face, Bai Nuyenka repeatedly tried to control her emotions. She coughed a few times, her voice slightly hoarse. "Third sister is joking. Although I feel a little better, I'm still weak and feeble. Hearing that father was visiting, I thought someone who is ill and has a listless appearance could easily make father worry. Wouldn't that be a crime of unfilial piety? That's why I forced myself to get Granny Q to help me with my makeup, not expecting to be blamed by third sister. If that's the case, then third sister can hit me." Finishing speaking, she forced herself to extend her right hand towards Bai Nuyendong, but dropped midway due to weakness, further proving she wasn't lying. So weak, yet she was still thinking of her father, not wanting him to worry. This wasn't unfilial piety, but great filial piety. Moreover, all her words were following Bai Nudenzung's lead. Bai Nudenka curled her lips, her eyes holding a hint of resentment, resembling a beautiful woman pouting, subtly shattering Bai Nudenzung's intentions. Bai Nudendung was taken aback. Why had Bai Nudenka suddenly become so eloquent, skillfully pouting, not only avoiding falling into the trap in her words but also calmly pleasing her father? Seeing the look of admiration in Bo Chu Tan's eyes, she felt extremely uncomfortable. That smile from her father was only for her and her eldest sister. What did this little wench Bai Nudenka rely on to obtain it? Looking at your pleasing and lively appearance, who would bear to hit you? Seeing that the situation was not good, Chewing Van subtly pinched Bai Nudendung without changing her expression, signaling her not to reveal any clues, or Bo Chu Than would discover something was wrong. On one hand, she laughed and said, "This child, you really have too many thoughts. Master knows you best. As long as you take good care of your health, nothing else matters. You're weak, standing up and moving around like that. If a breeze blows, your condition will worsen. Wouldn't that make Master even sadder?" Traps were everywhere in the words of these two. They didn't forget to pin the label of unfilial piety on her. Amidst the talking and laughter, if Bai Nudenka's reaction wasn't skillful and her logic patterned, it would only seem more awkward. But youth had its advantages. She snuggled into Bo Chu Tan's embrace and whined, "Father, listen to her. Concubine is sharp-tongued. How can I argue with her? Father, please stand up for me." Bai Chu Than had always been extremely fond of this daughter in his heart, but he had been fighting outside for years and rarely returned home. Bai Nudenka had repeatedly resisted him, making him very embarrassed. He didn't expect that this time, after falling seriously ill, she had become closer to him. In the end, his daughter had grown up and become sensible. Bai Chu Than felt happy in his heart, smiled, and stroked her head. Okay, Father will stand up for you. It's all your concubine's fault. She's always bullying you. One day, your father and I will team up and bully her back, okay?" Bai Nudenka smiled faintly and said, "Forget it. If it can make father smile, I'm willing to be teased by concubine." As soon as these words came out, it turned into her enduring humiliation for the sake of her loved ones, making her father happy. Chewing Van and Bai Nudendung didn't expect that after their careful planning, they would instead end up benefiting Bai Nudenka, causing them to be so angry they almost fainted. Even Chewing Van almost couldn't maintain the smile on her face. With Granny Q and Bok Kai, wholeheartedly teaching, Bai Nudenka had never been close to Bo Chu Than. How could she suddenly turn things around? Who was playing tricks inside? It was truly infuriating. Bai Nudendung covered her mouth and giggled, as if joking, "Father must know fourth sister best." Hearing that fourth sister had been jilted, father rushed back from thousands of miles away, just to give fourth sister support. But in the end, she was young and couldn't hide the sharpness in her words. Bai Chu Than frowned. Nudenka had fallen ill because of the engagement being cancelled, and she was still sick now, so why bring this up again? But remembering that Bai Nudendung was young, he didn't scold her. However, he was a military general, straightforward and direct. If it had been mentioned, he should handle everything clearly and decisively, so as to avoid any future entanglements. This marriage, I'm afraid, won't happen. Finally, the key point had been reached. Chewing Van once again had the opportunity to be smug. In recent days, she had been planning for the group of people like Granny Q to teach Bai Nudenka the importance of saving the marriage, saying the consequences were extremely serious, coercing and enticing her, definitely wanting Bai Nudenka to cry and beg to salvage the marriage. Based on Bo Chu Tan's personality, the Yenguo Duke's mansion cancelling the engagement with Bai Nu Yen Ka. No matter what the reason, Bo Chu Than would not want to marry Bai Nu Yen Ka over there again, so as to avoid suffering. But Bai Nu Yen Ka did not understand the hard work within, thinking of the Yenguo Duke's mansion's noble lineage, along with the tragic situation after being jilted, she would definitely want to marry. Moreover, in Bai Nu Yen Zung's earlier words, there was originally a trap, saying that Bo Chu Than came back to give Bai Nu Yen Ka support. Bai Nu Yen Ka had been persuaded by the group of people like Granny Q. If she cried and insisted on having Bo Chu Than salvage the marriage, Bo Chu Than, although rarely at home, would be disappointed in Bai Nu Yen Ka, and his love would gradually fade. Want to stir up discord, eh? Looking at the smile in Chewing Van's eyes, Bai Nu Yen Ka smiled lightly in her heart. In her previous life, she was insensible and argued with her father about this matter. But now she was different, and was afraid that she would disappoint Chewing Van again. Chapter 4. Concubine. Daughter understands. It's father wanting what's best for me. If the Yenguo Duke's mansion annulled the engagement because they were dissatisfied with me, then even if I were to marry into their family, they wouldn't treat me well. If it was due to a misunderstanding, then they are people who can't distinguish right from wrong, and I can't rely on them. Bai Nu Yen Ka spoke slowly, reasonably and emotionally, fully expressing Bo Chu Tan's innermost thoughts. Finally, she said dejectedly, "Daughter is only saddened that she has caused father to lose face." Looking at his innocent daughter, Bo Chu Tan's heart was filled with affection. He said tenderly, "It has nothing to do with Kar. It is the Yenguo Duke's mansion that is being too condescending. Humph, and Traknheen, that young master, is not a good person either. He's spoiled, arrogant, and narrow-minded. How could he be worthy of my Kar? Kar, rest assured, in the future, father will definitely find you a good marriage. Even if the Yenguo Duke's mansion had the Empress Dowager's backing, he would still demand justice for Kar." Chewing Van subtly raised her face. "Humph, that ugly little wretch, with no talent or virtue, and jilted, could she still find a good marriage in this life? In the future, she could only be molded in her hands." Bai Nu Yen Ka swayed his arm, petulantly saying, "Daughter doesn't want to marry. I want to stay by father's side for life, unless father dislikes me and doesn't want me anymore." As she spoke, she looked towards Bai Nu Yen Dung, saying, "My sisters and I are all daughters of the Ba family. And prosperity, we share prosperity. In adversity, we share adversity. One the Yenguo Duke's mansion's annulment will likely affect my elder sister's reputation as well. No wonder third sister is angry in her heart." Nu Den Kla apologizes to third sister. "One in prosperity, we share prosperity. In adversity, we share adversity, a proverb meaning we share the good and the bad together." She was the youngest and the one who was jilted, yet she was so considerate and understanding, thinking of Bai Nu Yen Zung's reputation, and even apologizing to her. Comparing the two, Bai Nu Yen Dung, as the elder sister, not only didn't comfort her younger sister, but had just mentioned the annulment, inevitably revealing a narrow-mindedness, lacking sisterly love. She was always the one who framed Bai Nu Yen Ka. Bai Nu Yen Dung never expected Bai Nu Yen Ka to take the initiative to strike back, and was momentarily stunned. Seeing that Bai Nu Yen Dung couldn't refute, Chewing Van felt anxious in her heart. She smiled soothingly. "What are you implying, Nu Den Ka? You and Dunger are sisters. How could Dunger be angry about this? Even if she's angry at the Yenguo Duke's mansion for being condescending, and indignant for you because you've been treated unfairly." As she spoke, she deliberately, as if unintentionally, bumped her left arm, letting out a soft groan, her face showing pain, immediately drawing everyone's attention to her left arm. Looking at that inconvenient left arm, tenderness welled up in Bo Chu Tan's heart. He looked at Bai Nu Den Dung, the unhappiness from earlier instantly vanishing, and he said gently, "Her left arm is injured. She should still be careful. Quickly sit down." "Concubine, is your arm injured?" "What happened?" Knowing that Chewing Van was putting on an act, Bai Nguyen Ka still pretended to be surprised. If she didn't let Chewing Van continue her performance, how could she smash her facade? Chewing Van's expression was pale, but she still smiled kindly. "It's nothing serious. Nguyen Ka doesn't need to take it to heart." Bai Chu Than sighed and said, "Kar, you don't know. Earlier, when you were seriously ill, you were delirious, unconscious." Concubine Chewing was extremely worried, and somehow found a doctor who said that human flesh had to be used as a medicinal ingredient to cure you. After Concubine Chewing found out, she cut a piece of flesh from her arm to use as a medicinal ingredient for you. Unexpectedly, after you ate it, your condition greatly improved. Concubine Chewing treats you with such loving care, yet doesn't boast about her contributions. Such a big thing, she didn't even tell you. He continued to praise her, saying, "Vanna, I entrusted the bemanor and Nguyen Ka to you, and I indeed didn't misjudge you." Chewing Van lowered her head shyly, her face demure. "Master, don't say that." Ban Nguyen Dung took the opportunity to act coquettishly, saying, "Mother, you treat fourth sister even better than you treat me. You only love sister, you don't love me anymore. I won't have it." "Third miss, don't say that. Concubine is kind, it's our Buff family's blessing." Granny Q, hearing this, wiped the corners of her wet eyes and said, "This old servant didn't expect that Concubine Chewing, so delicate, could grit her teeth and endure the pain, cutting flesh from her arm to treat fourth miss. It can be seen how loving she is towards fourth miss. It really moves heaven and earth, which is why fourth miss's illness improved. Cutting flesh for medicine, even a biological mother would only do that much. Fourth miss is indeed blessed to have someone love her so much, able to save her from the gates of hell. Otherwise, I'm afraid." The maidservants and matrons in the room, one after another, praised Concubine Chewing's righteous act endlessly, the whole room filled with words of praise. Hearing the flattery from those around her, Bai Nguyen Ka also put on a deeply moved expression, her eyes brimming with tears, clear and moist. These were the exact words she had spoken in her previous life. Speaking them again now, they were sincere and heartfelt, revealing not the slightest flaw. In her previous life, her relationship with Chewing Van had been ordinary. But after the Henguo Duke's mansion annulled the engagement, she was devastated, and then fell ill. It was her weakest and most painful time. But hearing that Chewing Van had cut her flesh to cure her, she was shocked in her heart, and said to herself, from now on, she would not doubt or be wary of Chewing Van again, she would listen to whatever she said. Even towards the arrogant Bai Nguyen Dung, she restrained herself a lot. How could she have imagined at the time that everything had been designed by Chewing Van? Cutting flesh to cure the disease, a piece of pork had won over the hearts of both her and her father. How brilliant! What great cutting flesh for medicine! Seeing this scene of motherly love and filial piety, Bo Chu Than was extremely pleased. He had initially worried that Chewing Van was mistreating Bai Nguyen Ka, but after hearing about the cutting flesh treatment, he was completely relieved. Such a kind act, surely Chewing Van truly regarded Nguyen Ka as her own daughter and loved her. Chewing Van calculated people's hearts skillfully, and also knew Bo Chu Than and Bai Nguyen Ka's personalities well, successfully winning over the two. Pleased in her heart, she said with a smile, "Good child, don't cry. Be mindful of your sick body. Let's not mention the past anymore. From now on, let's try our best to live well together." Seeing that a bowl of medicine had been prepared on the side, she quickly said, "We came at the wrong time, and delayed you from drinking your medicine. This is more important, let concubine feed you." Saying so, she held the bowl of medicine, scooped a spoonful, and brought it to Bai Nguyen Ka's mouth. Looking at Chewing Van's caring motherly appearance, Boy Nguyen suppressed the surging anger in her heart, her eyes scanning across the thick, dark medicine, showing a hint of something amiss. Instantly, a look of emotion came over her face, and she reached out to support the bowl of medicine. Concubine cut flesh for Nguyen Ka, and was injured. Your arm must be very painful. I wouldn't dare let you lift a finger. Let me drink it myself. Shuing Van was determined to maintain her image of a caring mother. How could she agree? As the two argued, Boy Nguyen Ka inadvertently tilted the bowl of medicine, and it just happened to spill onto Shuing Van's injured left arm. Boy Nguyen Ka was frightened and said hastily, "Concubine, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It must have scalded your wound. Does it hurt?" As she spoke, she rolled up Shuing Van's sleeve, wanting to examine the wound, while scolding the maidservants in the room. "What are you all standing around for? Don't you see concubine has been burned? Quickly go get burn medicine, and then invite the doctor here. If something happens to concubine, flaying your skins would still be too light a punishment." Compared to Banu Den Ka, Shuing Van was even more frightened, repeatedly saying, "No need. No need. Cutting flesh to cure the disease was only a method to win over Bo Chu Than. She wasn't so stupid as to cut her own flesh for this thorn in her side, Boy Nguyen Ka. If she allowed Boy Nguyen Ka to remove the bandage and apply medicine, everything would be exposed.